Hello, welcome to my video introducing Tabitha. Tabitha is my latest novel. It is my first venture into writing primarily for adults, but teenagers are still centre stage. There are 4 main teenage characters, including the eponymous Tabitha. In this video, you will meet some of my wonderful supporters. There's Anne, Anna, the cover designer, Ella, Leo, and my wife, Tina.
Hello there and welcome. My name's Anne Hewitt and we're here tonight to discuss a new book that is about to be launched. The book is called Tabitha and I have with me its author, Trevor Stubbs, and the illustrator who designed the front cover, and that is Anna Hewitt-Raptani there. And tonight we're going to just go through a little bit more about the background to this book. So, okay, Trevor, I know that you were a vicar for many, many years. I think you also trained ministers in Sudan, not anywhere that easy.
Yeah.
And after a very full and active career, you came back, you then retired to Keynsham. And I'm interested to know why you didn't just sort of then relax, having worked hard all your life. What's made you carry on producing a book like Tabitha?
Well, when you don't have the set things to do, then you've got to find something and do something which you feel is going to be enjoyable and useful. And I always wanted to work with young people, always found them fascinating. I've worked in ever since I was a teenager, I've worked in youth clubs. I never left. I went to, when I was 16, I stayed on and helped, and I've been working with young people ever since. So I wanted to continue that and then write for them. That's seemed something I could do.
So this isn't your first book?
Oh no, I've written 10, this is my 10th publication, but 7 of those are young adult books.
And so, this one is different?
And this is different. This is not written specifically for teenagers, but about teenagers. It's a coming of age book. So it's directed primarily at adults. But I know that some teenagers have read it.
Okay, and then just briefly, so we just briefly introduced Anna and found out a little bit more. So Anna, you are hopefully you're about to go off and study illustration at university. And is this your first book cover?
No, so I met Trevor at a youth group with Keynsham Church, and then he asked me to illustrate a story called Stardust, which lots of short stories. And then he asked me to illustrate his next book, which was an honour really. And yeah, it's been really helpful to make a portfolio to use for universities, and it's helped me got an unconditional place.
So that's a really good thing. Okay, Trevor. So you mentioned that you've already written quite a few books. Would you like to just tell us a little bit more about what you've written?
Well, I began with the White Gates series in 2014, and there are 4 books in that series, and they're written for older teenagers, 15, 16. The protagonists are 17 and 18, and so I got asked when I was doing those, what about the younger ones, and can you do something a bit shorter and a bit easier for younger ones? So I then wrote the Flip series, Flip trilogy, aimed at 11, 12, 13-year-olds.
Well, yeah, and I think, Anna, that you have read some of those books.
Yes, I read the Flip series. I remember really enjoying it.
Yes, and I can remember the White Gates and wondering what adventure it would be next.
Yeah.
So you certainly brought a lot of joy to people already. And maybe now it would be good to actually see a bit more about what we actually have inside Tabitha. Okay then, Trevor, let's just actually have a look at Tabitha in a little bit more detail. So the book is in a way in 2 sections with a middle bit, which is quite interesting. We'll come on to that in a while. But would you like to introduce then the first part of this story and set the scene for us?
Okay, so in the first part we meet Tabitha, who is the eponymous heroine, and also her nemesis, or Gareth Green, whom she calls Gross Griff, who has bullied her ever since she was 6. And he has a little gang around him, his cronies, and she finds that really difficult. She tries to avoid him at times. He becomes obsessed with her, though. That's part of the problem, because she is different, because she won't just go home crying and all that sort of thing. She stands up to him a bit, and he sees her as a challenge. He also, at the age of 14, is beginning to experience attraction, and he's starting to be attracted to her, and he finds that something that he has to cope with, and she has to cope with it too. So that's what the first part of the book is looks at.
Would you like to read us a little bit then?
I thought that she when she's 8, she discovers somebody else's garden right next to a big park with big trees. And since she's growing up on a council estate with very little in terms of greenery, this is a fascinating place for her, and she warms to it. So, like lots of girls in that part of the world, she's allowed to wander even at the age of 8. And she goes into this garden, somebody else's garden, but she never sees who it belongs to. And she finds in this garden a place of fascination. This is where the fairies live. This is somewhere special. And I'll read you a bit about that. Tabby, that's what they called her when she was 8, stared up at the ornamental iron gates that led into the grounds of the park. The ironwork and the view of the great trees which line the driveway were one of Tabitha's favourite places. She never came here with anyone else. She kept her visits secret. She had discovered the place in one of her early explorations. Here were gates for giants, the most enormous in the world, extending right up into the sky. It was a place of great fascination to a little girl, especially one who had affinity for nature, and she would often just stand there and gaze at the great trees, watching the way they change with the seasons.
And I'm now joined by Ella, who comes with a proper, genuine Yorkshire accent. And also Tina is here as well, and I think she will be appearing a little bit later. But I will hand over now to Ella.
To the left of the gates was a smaller wall that met the high one at a right angle. It enclosed the gatehouse. In it was a small wooden door that was magical and filled Tabby with curiosity. What lay beyond? The wooden door had a latch that could be lifted by pressing down with the thumb. One sunny summer day, Tabby's curiosity overtook her. She reached above her head and pulled the little lever down and pushed. After a couple of tries, the gate had opened just enough for her to creep through. She found herself in a well-kept garden behind the small, isolated gatehouse. What she found was beautiful, a tiny garden, as if made for a small person. Something made Tabby feel that it had been put there just for her.
Well, thank you, Trevor. It certainly makes you want to read on a bit more. Okay then, well, Trevor, I've got a question for you. Yeah, I'm interested to know, I mean, you must have a range of experience. You could write a book about many things. So what made you write a book about a young girl?
Well, it's an interesting question. It's not just about a young girl. She is one of the teenagers in the story, and it's about the adults in her life too. It's about teachers. So it's not just about her. But I think that it's important to note that it's hardest for girls, and particularly girls who in an environment like this, who stand out ethnically, and how she fits in and how she manages it when she's an only one in her family. She's got no brothers or sisters. I just wanted to try and explore the disadvantages somebody like that would have and how she might overcome them. So I've never been a teenage girl, and I certainly have not been a teenage boy like Gross Griff, who comes into the story and is a real pain. I was a very retiring, shy character in my teens, but I gradually grew to have more confidence, and I think there's some of my story in that with Tabitha, and I would like young people to try and develop that kind of confidence that she does, even though she starts from a pretty low threshold to start with. It's difficult for her at beginning.
Yeah, you certainly do see her confidence growing and her self-assuredness in that. Yes. Well, thank you. Okay, we've now got more visitors joining us. So I'd like to introduce Tina, Trevor's wife. And I'd also like to introduce Leo. And of course we have Anna here. They are going to read more of the book, and Trevor will introduce what they're going to do.
Okay, so we've had Tabitha find her little garden, and she visits it over several years, and now she is around about 13, and over 13, and she's visiting her garden. She is a little bit worried about who might be living in the cottage. So that's where we're picking up. She doesn't want to be seen. She wants to keep it a secret.
She hurriedly left the garden, looking towards the cottage rather than the direction she was going. As she closed the little door behind her, Tabitha became overwhelmed by a sense of loss. As usual, there'd be no one to be seen in the rest of the garden or the house. But there was something final about this departure. The appearance of the key had frightened her. Might now be the time to stop taking the risk of being caught. She couldn't be caught. A little shiver spread up and down her backbone. What if she was at that very moment being watched? She turned her face from the little wooden door, and she was face to face, not with the owner, but with none other than Gross Griff and his cronies.
Well, looky here. Look who's come to meet us.
Green drawled to his disciples, a huge triumphant smirk on his face.
Ugh, what are you doing here? I don't want nothing to do with you. Buzz off.
What am I doing here? Could ask you the same question.
Mind your own business.
Now, no need to get tetchy.
You followed me, didn't you?
So, suppose we did. What are you doing in that there garden?
Nothing that has anything to do with you.
I like it when you spit fire. It adds spice.
Griff leered at his victim.
What are you on about?
Inside her, despite her defiance, Tabitha was beginning to panic.
Well, out here there isn't a soul to be seen, apart from you, me and me mates, that is. I reckon this is as good a place for you to give me that snog you've been promising me. Come to think of it, you might like to give us all one.
In obedience to their master, Griff's cronies began to lick their disgusting lips and make assenting noises.
In your dreams.
Tabitha turned her back and made to walk past them out onto the road. But Green grabbed her arm and pulled her back, and then pushed his ugly face towards hers, close enough to smell his rancid breath. Probably hadn't cleaned his teeth for a month.
Get off me, you vile monster.
Tabs moved ahead to avoid his puckered lips and sniggering nose.
That's it. Go on shouting. I like it. Nobody'll hear you.
What happened next happened at the speed of light. Instinctively, Tabs kicked Griff in the leg with the point of her shoe, a blow that would have got her a red card on the football pitch. And, as he jumped upwards in surprise, she followed it up with a punch that landed fair and square in the middle of his fat, ugly, snotty nose. The result was amazing. He staggered backwards, doubled up, expelled a spurt of blood, and made a hideous noise mixed with a variety of expletives. The blood continued to run, and he sank down onto one knee, clutching his face.
You bitch!
Tabitha stood upright, walked past him, head aloft, and made towards the road once more. Had Green been alone, she would have won, but he was not.
And the middle section is actually very different, and it seems to have children's drawings in it, young people's work. Anna, were you there at the event where this came from?
Yeah, so a few of the works came from an event at Cambridgeshire Music Festival. There was a children's tent where people could just talk about what was on your mind as a young person, and people did mind maps about the things that worried them, or poems about what they wanted to do in the future, and just it was a chance for people to hear the voices of young people, basically.
Yes, and I was actually at that event. It was a lovely and interesting event. So some of the work is there from that and some from other things. So it's good to actually have teenagers featuring the middle of it. And I was particularly taken because Trevor has experience. You've worked in Sudan.
Yeah.
And this is the voice of a child who's in a church with a minister who you actually trained.
Yes, one of those from our college in South Sudan. Yeah.
Okay, and this girl's name is Sylvia. She's in the first grade, which would make her about the first year of secondary school, which would make her about 13. And her account is in many ways different from how a young person here might think. She's certainly really valuing education and recognising its value. And that really came out to me. And how people needed to really listen to children. And the bit I really loved was something where she was saying, sometimes in church, when seats are not enough for people, then they will start removing us, children, from the seats so adults may sit. The worst is that even when we were the first people who keep time and arrive very early, are we not equal before God? So we are tired of being abused and rejected everywhere. And I think that's lovely to get that little teenage voice from the other side of the world, but still so relevant.
And that took a lot of courage to write, because some people would say, how dare you say things like that? So she's a brave little girl. Well, not that little, she's 13.
So really, really interesting. Some poems there. I think there's a poem by yourself, Anna.
Yeah.
Even one by Leo, I believe. So moving on, we then get to part 2, which is possibly just longer than the first part.
But I'm not going to say too much about what happens in part 2, because I don't want to give the plot away, do I?
Absolutely not.
But just to say that the course does not run smooth. It's not all about a secret garden. There's all sorts of other things come into it, and some things which are quite shocking. And but nothing happens in this that hasn't happened in real life, in my experience, to some teenager or other down the years. And you'd be shocked to know some of the things, but you've got to read them to find them out.
Well, it certainly was a page turner. I picked this up and started reading and kept going, and I probably read it over 2 days, I think. And I know Alan, my husband, has also read it. So it's a really good read, and I would recommend it. It's got an interesting ending to it, in a way.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, the very interesting ending, without giving things away, quite a little twist and a turn. It didn't end how I'd expect. But going back, I think, to the beginning, where you actually dedicate this book to teachers.
The teachers, yes.
And the last little bit is an interesting one. I don't know if you'd like to explain the very last bit that's
Well,
added.
after the story has ended, there is an extra bit of bonus material, which is written like it was from Tabitha herself when she was a bit younger, telling us about her trip to York with the school, because York is just up the road. And they have an interesting outing, and she finishes off by saying to her teacher, well, let me read it, because I think this kind of sums up how I really appreciate the work of teachers for teenagers. They are so important. When we get back, I asked Jack Frost, that's the teacher, his name isn't really Jack Frost, why he wants to work as a teacher in Milheaton when there are plenty of things he could do to make money in places like York. He says that there are many things that are more important in life than making money, and looking after kids is one of them. I'm glad he does. I mean, where would I be without people like him?
And that is a lovely ending. So thank you, Trevor. All right.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly I'd recommend this book. It's a really good read. Any more thoughts from you, Anna, at this stage?
Well, it's just really nice to see it as a finished piece, and I think the addition of the kids, what their voice in the middle is just a really good, nice thing. I've been reading it from the beginning when they were like rough kind of drafts, and it's been really nice to see it progress into a proper story. So yeah.
So, well,
And
thank you.
I'm so grateful to Anna. And when she drew her picture of Tabitha for the front cover, I thought, wow, that is just what this girl looks like. So well done, Anna.
Thank you.
And in your acknowledgements, I think one of the ladies, or one of the people who gets a very big mention is your wife.
Oh yes, I can't do anything without her. She has read all of my stuff, and she's been my editor in many ways and advisor. She then proofreads the whole thing as well and everything. So I'm so grateful to her. It wouldn't happen without her.
Well, so thank you very much, Trevor.
Thank you.
And Anna. A fascinating read.